Hey guys, it's your girl ToriLive, and you're used to seeing me on the Daily Nugget with ToriLive, but today we are bringing back something kind of new but kind of old. So I did this thing called Faith and Art. I did the first one with a woman named Nettie Long, and it was really awesome. We had a deep conversation just talking about our artistry and our faith. And it was so good that I actually decided to continue it. I decided to continue faith and art as a means to bring light to light and awareness to other faith-based artists who we are a part of the secular world in terms of our artistry. We put our stuff out there. We want people to be encouraged and empowered, but we're not afraid of the gospel either. So yeah, this is going to be a little interesting. We're going to, as we go through this series, this is episode 1. And as we go through this series and we'll talk to more artists, we talk about how, we're going to go deep. Like, we're just going to go deep on topics that your church may or may not be talking about. So I'm going to introduce to you Nettie Long. Nettie Long was my very, very first, like I said, my very, very first artist that I brought on this platform. And seeing as I'm going ahead into seasons of the faith and art, I'm not going to say podcast, but as I'm going into seasons of the Faith and Art broadcast, I thought it would only be right to bring her up as my very first official artist as we go into further episodes. So I'm going to bring up Nettie Long and we're going to begin a deep dive discussion. Hope you enjoy. Hi,
Hi,
Nettie.
Tori.
Hi. I'm great. I'm great. I'm wonderful, actually. Thank you so much for coming on to the platform with me. I really appreciate your time.
Girl, it's my pleasure. We had a great discussion last time, and it brought on a lot of, people conversating, and it was good. It was really good. So I think that the direction that you're going in is a much needed platform because a lot of believers don't really get to do their two side of the coin, if you want to, so we'll call it that. And so, this is a great topic. So I think, what better yet than to start that off, do that kickoff. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's really an honor to have you here to do the kickoff. What a lot of people don't know is that the Faith and Art Project was really the brainchild of the both of us. I
Mhm.
wanted to interview you, I wanted to talk to you as an artist, and I'm like, faith and art really is something that we should dig more deep into. There's a lot of faith-based artists that I feel, just personally, my opinion is that we tend to fall into the background of everything else. But as a believer myself, I know that Jesus has a place in everything that we do, and it's really important that we do put him at the forefront of everything that we go forward in all of our endeavors.
Mhm.
So, as we got into our conversation in the last episode, in the beginning, right?
Right.
I'm gonna run back a few questions, and I want to see how your answers go. So I asked you, who are you? So who are you, Nettie Long?
Ah, Nettie Long is her pain. Nettie
Mm-hmm.
Long is her experiences. Nettie Long is her burdens, that used to weigh her down. Nettie Long was trauma. She was traumatized. Um, but who she is now, who she is now, that's what I was.
Mm-hmm.
But, who I am now is, I'm reborn into this being that I am supposed to be who I am. And I
Yeah.
went through the things that I went through because they built the character of who I am today. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's all of those things. I'm all of these things. Um, and I thank God for the journey, because ultimately it saved my life.
Yeah.
So if that even makes sense.
It does. It
To a
absolutely
believer, it
does.
should make sense. But I mean, ultimately, poetry ended up saving my life. So
Mm-hmm. That's
Yeah.
really deep, Nettie. We're gonna really go deep into that because I like where you're going with that one right there. Um, so another thing that we talked about last time, we talked about how did you find the faith to step out into your artistry, and that's kind of in the direction of like where you were going with that. You said poetry saved you. So yeah, how did you find the faith to step out into artistry?
Okay, so when you are a believer, right?
Hmm.
Everybody talks about this faith walk, but you
Hmm.
actually have to live it,
That's right.
right? You actually have to go into this, what the world would call blindly, right? Believing
Hmm.
in something that you don't see, right? And um, and pretty much believing that, pretty much believing in the unseen, and so that's a practice. That's not something that's very easy, especially for someone who is just starting to become a believer. You
Hmm.
know, most people conform to being a believer because their situation is just so bad. What else do they have to lose? You know, to but to believe in God, um, and others. You know, as they're seasoned, they see the true power of God,
Yeah.
and so faith is the substance of things not seen, the evidence of things right hoped for, right? So
That's
it's like, hello, that you when you connect the dots, it's that easy. You've got nothing but to stand on is faith. The only thing you have is faith. Because you, even though you don't see, you do see. You see
right.
the power of God moving on behalf of your life, the favor that is on your life, the favor that you don't even deserve to
That's right.
have on your life, and the platforms God has opened up for me that I didn't deserve. And and so you when you see God all around you, you know God.
That's right.
And there is no faith is the only thing that you have to stand on. The only thing that has worked. And that's why people do it.
Amen.
Hmm.
Amen. That is good stuff right there. She going deep on us already. Listen, Nettie Long is a plethora of so much knowledge. Like she has so much just experience, and I love what you said right there. Now you y'all know she's a poet for real. She said even when you don't see it, you see it. You know, and that's what faith is. Faith, like you said, the substance of things that we can't in the natural
Right.
see, but that our faith eyes can see. You
Hmm.
know, that's girl. Yeah, and her story, as we dive a little deeper, you're going to understand exactly why she says that. So if you are on this live as it's being recorded, maybe after it's been recorded, and you may not have a relationship with Christ, or you may be wondering, just a little curious about a relationship with Christ, I encourage you to definitely stay on through the rest of this, and hopefully a part of Nettie's testimony will open up your eyes and encourage you to say, you know what, I'm going to give God a try today, because if he could do it for her, he can do it for me. And I really believe that. I personally hope that this will meet you right where you are. And if you are watching this, I really, really encourage you to go ahead and hit the bell, okay? Because you want to stay up on all notifications. You want to make sure that the next time we roll out the next faith and art with our next artist, that you are ready to go. So hit subscribe, hit the bell, don't miss any notifications, and please, 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 please share the gospel, y'all, and share this video. So we went on to talk about a little bit of what we talked about last time, but let's do a new thing, y'all. Let's do a new thing. So Nettie, a lot of times, right before we find the beauty of an art form, we find ourselves running from something. Okay, trying our hardest to avoid something, right? Changing something, or hiding from something, or trying to outrun and escape something or someone, right?
Right.
What, I dare to ask you this question. What chased you into the arms of poetry?
Whew, girl. Um, I have yet to even correlate any of my
Mm.
poetry with my last trauma, my latest trauma. And it was in 2013 where what I was dealing with was finding out for the first time that my husband had whom whom was the love of my life, um, he was molesting our girls. And
Ooh.
so that was enough right there to take me out. I'm only at a point right now where I'm actually able to talk about it because it's a very touchy subject that a lot of women probably keep to themselves. But I no longer want the enemy to hold me down for any reason. But this has to get out. This is a story that I've been holding on for years. I've only been talking about it now on two different platforms, and this is one of them. Um, so I'm that's what I was running from myself, because at that point I was suicidal. I didn't even there was yeah, I contemplated suicide. Yes, a believer,
Mhm.
strong in her faith,
Yeah.
got knocked down by something tragic, traumatizing, something actually really real, right? Um, because a lot of people have this misconception that Christianity, people who are believers don't go through anything. Yeah,
True.
but they do.
Yeah.
And especially people who God has chosen. And so understand the magnitude of how I was deceived, the deception that I was up. I was just, ah, I,
Mm.
if I could even talk about it, like I barely had words to even mustered up. You know what I mean? Like I could barely exist. I was barely existing. So I
Yeah.
was running from myself. I wanted to hide under a rock. I wanted to just die because it was just too heavy. It was heavy beyond that I could even imagine, because here I am, a victim. I was a victim of molestation. I was a victim of those traumatizing things myself as a child. And I thought I had gotten over this, this thing that had been following me since I was a child,
Mm-hmm.
and it's demonic, and so it's generational. Apparently, that really hit generational for me. Now I understand what generational curses are. So when you don't deal with them at the root, they follow you, and they follow you all the way to your kids. So
Yeah.
that is what got me into poetry, because I had to seek a health specialist. That health specialist had to, I had to cope somehow. So I wasn't going to take medication, and I wasn't going to, you know, um, the thoughts were so heavy. I had to let them out somehow. And she kept pressing me to write. I'm like, I don't want to write. I can't even mess up sentences. And there were times where we sat in our sessions, and I just I could barely talk. I just listened. And
Mm.
so really it was just when I finally put the pen in the hand and on the paper,
Mm-hmm. Wow.
where I had a lot to say. And the way that it was coming out poetically. So I'm like, I don't even know where this is coming from, how this was even here, how,
Mm.
but apparently it was always inside of me, and I just didn't know it. And so I had to apply my faith that whatever was going to come out on that paper was going to make sense.
Mm.
And the rest is history from there.
Wow. Wow. I love how you applied your testimony to the paper. Like
Mm-hmm.
literally, that is your poetry. I mean, you write about different things. You write
I
about
do.
a whole array of different topics.
I do.
But those topics where you go in and you really speak your testimony, it's almost like I can see you, in those sessions. I can see it in my mind, see you sitting there journaling it out. And people truly and honestly downplay the power of poetry and
Mm-hmm.
spoken word and even dance, right? People kind of like think these are just hobbies, but like you said, this is really how people do cope with things. This is how people expand their testimony. You can't keep it to yourself. I love how you decided to write and be that open and vulnerable and then to share it. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people write, like myself. I wrote for years, to deal with stuff, and I kept them in notebooks. Like a lot of my poetry, um, I just kept in notebooks. I never read it. Some of the notebooks got lost, in moving and stuff. It just was never exposed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I began to expose my poetry that I realized, yeah, this is for me, but this is for someone else. So I really love your vulnerability in that way, because you're really gonna save a lot of people with what you have to say.
Amen. And I
So,
wholeheartedly believe that too.
yes,
Hmm.
absolutely. So, that's how you got to poetry.
Hmm.
Now let's go into uh deeper into the faith aspect. So, I don't know if you've ever heard this song. You probably have this song by PJ Morton. First begin. No one makes me feel the way you do inside. And I don't know what I would do without you, and that's no lie. If I die, I hope to find you in another life. So when I hear that song, it's a beautiful song and it's a love song that he's writing to a woman. But when I hear it as if it's my love song to Jesus.
Hmm.
You know, um, I want to go back to where it first began. We talk about finding our first love, and sometimes it's when we get that breakthrough, when we go back to our very first encounter with Christ. So, can you tell me where your love story with Christ first began?
So let me give you a little backstory about myself. Before I say that, because now I have to think about the very, very first encounter of that.
Mm,
So I okay, I have it. So I was always brought up in the church. Okay, like probably since I was, I don't know, the age of 5. And
mm,
so, um, and then my father ended up being a pastor. And so I'm a PK.
oh,
I was also a praise and worship leader in our church. And then um, I've had some traumas along the way as a child, as well as daddy trauma and all of that. So
right.
it wasn't until my adulthood now, like 3 kids later, right?
Mhm.
And I am now going to, or decided to go to, a church that really, really saved my life. Part of say this is like the turning point of really, really being a true believer, because when you're kind of born into this thing, or into
Talk
church, it doesn't mean you're actually really saved. Okay.
absolutely.
I was
You talking
a little,
right.
I was a little bit of a heathen, being a PK. And so and I really, I was playing church because you're growing up in the things of God doesn't mean they actually penetrate your heart. And so let's just be real
Yeah.
there for a minute. And so there was a lot of big expectations of me,
Mm,
even at 12 years old, and my father now is a pastor. To see grown women to even be jealous of me, um it was pretty like I didn't even really want anything to do with Christianity at all, right? Because
mhm.
oh, these women are just like the world, And
Yep.
so it wasn't until like 3 kids later, in an abusive relationship, a domestic violent one, and that I literally ran for my life, and I knew that God was real, okay, but I really had to search him for myself, and I really needed to go find a church that was going to do that, and it did, and I ended up going to the church that my mother was going to at the time, called Living Faith Christian Center. And let me tell you, uh, I learned so much on motherhood, just on being a mother, that I realized I am not doing this mother thing right. I'm not doing this believer thing right. I'm not doing this walk right. I'm not doing my serving right.
Right.
There was a lot of things that I realized that I was not doing honorable in the things of God, or even honorable to myself. And I was doing a huge disservice to my children. And so it was then where I went into an encounter that they had, and it was just being completely vulnerable, of women speaking their personal realities, and all of it was something that they touched base. Somebody who was molested spoke, somebody who had daddy issues spoke, so, who understood what abandonment was. I mean, and it was such an encounter that I was able to jot down all my sins, right, and throw them into a fire. And once I felt like I did that, I felt like I have a clean slate for real. So
Mm-hmm.
let me really walk this thing out. And I just felt God's love all over me that day. And it was a weekend encounter. And so I was just getting hit left and right with realities that touched so personal to me that I felt like you are right in my presence. And it was just something that I just, that's like that you thought well enough of me, of hundreds of people that are in this room, that I felt it was a personal connection. And so I felt at that point, and we're talking early 20s, like 23, 24, where I just said, I devote everything to you because I don't want to feel this pain. I don't want to feel this hurt. And I did just that. I did just that. I really served him with all of my heart.
Right.
And I was in a church that actually, they weren't my blood relatives, but they treated me better than relatives. So, and I just felt right at home. So I don't know if I answered your question.
You did, actually. You did.
But if I can say this real quick, that your life really depends on where you go to church.
Yes.
Your life really depends on where you go to church, and you have to be growing spiritually. Now, there is such a thing where you outgrow sometimes
Yeah.
your church, and that's a whole nother topic for another show. But only God can instruct you
That's right.
on when to go.
That's
But I was faithful in my church for 20 years. So, um 20 something years. So I'm just grateful that I'm rooted in the things of God and all of that. But
you're speaking right. You truly are speaking right. Are you real? You moving on the prophetic, because I was just about to say that right there, that it is important. A lot of people are scared away from church because we have our really rough church experiences. There's a lot of church hurt out there. There's a lot of places that unfortunately they're speaking the word of God, the name of God rather, but it's a lot of manipulation, a lot of crazy stuff going on that isn't necessarily of God. And this leads people astray and makes people feel as though they don't want to be bothered with church. They don't want that kind of, or they see people in the church who just,
don't look
like
any
you're
different than.
moving in like overly righteousness, but your life is not adding up, right? And these things make people tend to move away from the church. They don't want to be bothered. They're tired because what they're seeing there, they're seeing in the world too. And it's kind of like, well, I could just do what I do and not be bothered. Why? But I love what you said, because you found a place that matched your energy, a place that you were able to be fed, a place that you were able to hear the word and grow. Spiritual growth is everything. A lot of people believe, I could just worship God at home, and yeah, you can worship God wherever you are, and we are the church. I believe that too, but I also believe, just like we go to school, right? You go to school to get your degrees and stuff, because you can say in your mind, I'm a doctor and I'm studying all these things to be a doctor. I'm reading the books, I'm on YouTube. But you do have to attend a school. You do have to go get that degree before you can put the letters behind your name.
I like that.
Same is so for your spiritual development. And like you
Mhm.
said, sometimes you grow out of certain spaces, you move around. But again, yes, definitely pray for discernment, for knowing where to move and how to move. But yeah, it's important that you root yourself, you plant yourself in a place where you
Mhm.
can grow. I love that for you, because that really helped you to have your encounter. When
Yeah.
people think about their first encounter with God, their first love, you would think like, you grow up in church. Oh, that's your whole life. Nah, listen, it's when you have your personal encounter. My grandfather always told me, like, you have to know God for yourself. When you have your own come to Jesus moment, not what you were taught, not
Right.
what happened when your parents did this and that. It's you. And I love how you said that, because that will that hopefully will open up people's mind to say, you know what, it's not just about going to church, it's
Yep.
not just about attending, it's not about my mother's faith, it's me, personal. It's personal. Now, you talked about motherhood. You talked about motherhood and how there was some trauma, there was some stuff that happened, like in your motherhood journey. I do want to talk about the ministry of motherhood, right? Um, and being an artist and how the two correlate, right? These are two totally different worlds coming together to meet. Can you please tell me about being an artist mom? Like, how have your kids reacted to you being an artist? Because, like, girl, you're known. Okay, you're on stages and flyers. Like, how have your kids reacted to you finding your poetic voice and sharing it?
I think the most rememberable day that I had when it came to my children were the day that I asked them to actually come see me
Mm,
perform. And the event was nice enough to allow me to go first.
okay.
Being the fact that it was supposed to be for a more mature audience.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so yes, not every space that I do is faith based. So I do want to put that out there.
Okay.
But everything I speak is faith based. So with that being said, all of them came and were amazed at my performance and cried. It was just
Mhm.
very touching to see. Even my mother was there,
Wow.
who, well, that was the first time she ever saw me. And I had been performing now poetry, I think, for like 2 years. And then
Mm,
I had them come to see me, and it was they were very, very moved. So now that, I mean, they were always very supportive, but then they were able to see the fruits of my labor. And I think that really did something for them.
wow.
So they see me in a probably same as always, but maybe also in a different light, that she's this um, different, different source of a mother, like different, you know, I
Mm,
don't know. I know they were just really completely moved, and that was moving for me.
that's
So.
beautiful. That's really amazing. I'm always really amazed by, artists that I know and their children, especially when they bring their kids to the shows and stuff. I truly, truly enjoy that. It's like almost like a passing of the baton type of situation.
Mhm.
So with me saying that, have any of your children decided to like follow in your footsteps? Do any of them want to do any form of art, whether it be poetry or music? Because I mean, you sing and everything. Do
Mhm.
any of your kids want to do that? Have they explored that yet?
Yeah, so those who do follow me know that my son is an artist. He's a
Mm-hmm.
producer.
Oh,
Yes, and um, he's just amazing all around. His name is Elijah, and then
okay.
I have Tia, who also is a singer, um,
Beautiful.
and also she hasn't done any performing, but she has written a lot of music.
Okay.
So I think when she's ready to come out, she will.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I have a daughter who does poetry,
Nice.
and has done some amazing work with creating hooks for my son. And for my son, she's done like a few hooks for my son. So I mean, yeah, I want to say yeah.
Mhm. Oh, so you have like a
um,
predominantly like musical family. I like that.
yeah. So.
I have seen I believe I saw you and your son do a
Mhm.
performance. So how many collaborative pieces have you worked on with your children?
Probably about 5 or 6 right now. Yeah, five or
Nice.
six. Yep. And then one of those pieces that we did, we were able to go. Oh my goodness. That opened up opportunities for us to perform in many, many platforms. One of which was in Atlantic City,
Mm,
when they did the Renaissance event, and
mhm.
that's when like we shared the platform with Dougie Fresh, and it
Nice.
was it was amazing. So we were able to meet him, and among Angela Burton, who's a singer, a famous singer out there in Atlantic City, and other people too. So
That's really cool.
right. And we
You're really
what else did we do? Oh, what, Kelsey's? We performed at Kelsey's.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
You're really paving a way for your children and like opening doors. That's really dope. That's amazing how they're getting more involved in stuff and collaborating together. That's so cool. I
Mhm.
can say that I have a close relationship with my parents, and we have collaborated in terms of like actual church projects. But like,
Mhm.
y'all are out here making music and poetry together. That is so cool. How does it feel to collaborate with your children?
Honored
Oh
that they
wow,
would even want to share that space with me.
yeah,
Don't get it twisted. My son makes me, do appointments and stuff.
yes.
Yeah, and he lives under my roof, so go figure.
Okay. I mean, but look, hey, he's being a businessman, let you know.
I mean, I get free service, but hey, I still have to make appointments.
Book them appointments. Yep, you're teaching him right. You are teaching him right. So, within the last 5 years, what impact have your children had on your faith?
Oh,
Mm,
I would have to say everything.
mm,
Um, okay, so I really had to exercise faith on, especially after, the situation was revealed.
yeah,
Um, the trauma that was revealed on how I was going to love them, right? Because at this point, who is going to save me? You know,
yeah,
who is going to save me? It was definitely a faith walk after having been now just going back, having my first child. Um, I was 14. I was
mm,
14 when I was pregnant, and I got pregnant, and that was traumatizing in itself because I hadn't really even gotten over me being um, sexually traumatized at, you know 3 to 6, and then again at 12, and then, you know what I mean. It was just kind of
yeah,
like this ripple effect of you know. Um, just going through trauma after trauma in my life. And
yeah,
so I didn't really even know how to take care of my own child. Like I was still a kid myself.
mm,
And so I still wanted to finish school. And then I started working to provide for my daughter. And then, before I realized she's 4 and I'm graduating high school, and all this time went, and I really wasn't a true, like, full-time mother to her,
mm,
where, like, I felt like I lost all those years. And thank God I had my mom to help me raise her. But in the end, that ended up, hurting the relationship between us.
yeah,
Um, so, I was wise enough to not have any more kids until I was ready and I was well into my adulthood. So they were like, 8 and 9 years apart when I started to have more kids. But then because the relationship wasn't whole with my first, having adding more kids just brought more tension between us. And so,
mm-hmm,
you know, um, when I was in that abusive relationship and wanted to turn to God for the help, I was trying to be a better mother. That's when I realized this I'm not this good. Even though I'm providing for them, and even though they're in a safe space, like, I really had to start applying a different type of faith to raise them, and
mm-hmm,
hope that when I raise them in the things of God, that they're not going to depart from the word.
right,
And
yeah,
so I I had to really trust God on that faith walk on parenting, because I just did not. We, I, what I realized, what I know now, I wasn't such a good parent, you know. And so you have to take accountability for things like that. And and I wasn't always somebody. Even when I'm more mature and I'm married and I have all these children, and now I've gone through a whole nother trauma. I was like, who is going to save me? Now I'm back to that. Who's going to save me? Because I don't even know how to love myself right now. I don't even know how to love these kids right now, because these kids remind me of their father. Like, how
mm,
do I go from really loving them, and I really had to apply it, like, look, Lord, like, save me. I need you to show me, because now I'm angry, and I don't want to take it out on the children. And I was finding myself that it didn't, no matter, even though I said I didn't want to take it out on them, I was taking things out on them. And then, oh man, it was at a level of 100.
Yeah. Wow.
It was already off the Richter scale of 10, between 1 and 10. It was at 100. And um I was a hurricane, because my emotions were just all over the place. And so, as I started to get help, for all the emotions that I was feeling, with a professional, um and the church also helping me, if I needed, when I needed counseling, and also offering counseling. um it wasn't just it wasn't 6 months, it wasn't a year, it wasn't 2 years, it wasn't 3, 4. It took a matter of 5 years for me to get my act right, you know and for me to realize, oh no, now I have to even be a better mother. And then, you know what I mean, like, it took a course of years for me to get back to the love of really applying my faith to love, and applying my faith to continue getting better. Like, you have to be committed to your mental
It's
health,
true.
like, you are no good to your children if you cannot love yourself,
Mhm.
and you don't get your mental health in check. You're no good to nobody.
That's right.
And so I had to really learn those hard lessons. And now I'm at a point that, come on, trauma, what, you can't even do any worse anymore. And so like, I don't know if I'm answering your question. You want to ask that question again?
Well, you have been doing a good job answering. You've been really breaking this thing down. In the last 5 years, what impact have your children had on your faith? I really enjoy your vulnerability, your transparency, because it takes a lot to come to the realization that you're not meeting the mark in certain areas, and then to adjust and be ready to openly talk about that.
So
That's a lot.
So let me now answer that, because I wanted to give you guys a history, right? Because
Yes.
I do want to be vulnerable. And
Mhm.
so this happened in 2013. So now fast forward 5 years later, now we're at 2018, right?
Okay.
So and now we're in 2022, right?
Right.
And so in the last 5 years, I can successfully say that I have loved my kids unconditionally,
Yes.
that I have a relationship with my children, all of them,
Yes.
that when they are in need of someone to talk to, I am their go-to. And because there was a time where they couldn't come to me.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time that I did not hear what they had to say. It was, I don't care how you feel. I don't care how you think. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to be real,
Yeah.
we get like that. We get complacent as parents, and we think what we say and what we think is because I said so. No,
Mm.
no. And so I realized, no, that was bad parenting. You know what I mean? Um, so there was a lot of things I had to learn. And so this situation that happened, it was supposed to meant to destroy us. But the funny thing that God does when we apply our faith is just turn an awful situation into a masterpiece. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what I have to say about that.
Yes, I love that. I love that. It gave you grace. It
Mm.
taught you grace. It taught you, the same patience.
Humility.
Yes. Oh my God. The same patience and humility and grace that we are looking for from our Father in heaven. And a lot of times He'll turn around and say, okay, can you apply this? Can
Yeah.
you apply this grace? Can you apply
Exactly.
this level of faith, this level of sacrifice, this
Right.
level of unconditional love? And, I love how God brought all that full circle in your life with your children. And, I mean, listen, it takes a lot. I don't have any children myself, but from my mother's own experience and from
Mm.
being around other mothers like yourself, it takes a lot to own up to where you were toxic, or own up to where you were hurt, own up to where, things went left for you, and turn it around. So,
Mm.
I really applaud you. A lot of parents, like you said, I said so, therefore it is, they have that mindset, especially mothers of color. We have that mindset. Well, I said so, and I'm your mother, so you gotta listen.
Period.
But being
Mhm.
able to say, you know what? Let me take the time to readjust my thinking. Let me take the time to understand you. Let me take the time to love on you properly, because that's what we desire. So our
Mhm.
children, they're just younger versions of us. They need that too. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. So real quick, real quick, let's regroup, audience. So if you are not already following Nettie Long Poetry, I want you guys to take a moment after you leave this broadcast to make sure that you see it, it's scrolling around at the bottom of this screen.
Mhm.
Follow her on Instagram at Nettie Long Poetry. You can find her in other spaces like Facebook, like YouTube, with just her name, Nettie Long, and you will not regret it. Please stay up to date with the things that she's doing. Make sure you go over to her YouTube channel and you subscribe and you hit the bell. While you're here, before you leave, please make sure you hit the bell and you subscribe here so that you can keep up with everything faith and art. And when we roll out the next episode in the next 2 weeks, you will be ready to get another faith boost. So let's get back into it. Yeah, let's go a lot deeper. We've been very deep today. We talked about the ministry of motherhood, you as an artist, you and your faith. Now, let's dive a little deeper into this divorce and how you had to use faith, right? I wrote some notes, so let's go. Being an overcomer of domestic violence and finding the courage to leave an unhealthy marriage. Can you walk me through the journey that you went on to, one, find yourself and love yourself again, two, trust God again, three, find the strength to empower others and use your testimony in a creative way?
Hmm. So I believe having to find myself again, that really came from having um, a therapist. I wouldn't have been able to do that without her. Um, and sometimes you have to cancel. You have to fire a therapist and get a new one. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, but prayerfully, thankfully, I did not have to do that. Um, she was challenging me.
Yeah.
She challenged me. Um, and I didn't feel like she was just siding with me. You understand the
Mm-hmm.
difference, right? And so I think it's very important that you just can't confide in just your best friend, or people that you trust, that you love, that love and care about you, because they may not always give you what you need
Right.
to even push you. And so I would have to say that being able to unpack everything that I was traumatized with, because it did have a direct correlation of, the trauma that I was dealing with my girls. Because it's not just my girls, it actually affected the whole family. The
Mm-hmm.
boys realizing that their father had always wanted them to be girls, and now connecting that, that's what
Mm.
he wanted, us
Oh,
to be girls for, and so he definitely treated the boys and the girls differently, and that was also very noticeable, how rough he was disciplining the boys, as you know, different than it was with the girls. Um and so I think that having to unpack my past trauma to how it related to this trauma, and how I never really got rehabilitated. So I was attracting the wrong type of spirit. And so pedophilia was one of those things that were kind of really heavy all throughout my upbringing. And so I didn't realize how deep it was, until I was getting, the help through the therapist, of her understanding, pedophilia, and her understanding how I missed it, her understanding, how I missed the signs, her understanding of it, to explain it to me so that I can get education. I think education is the most important thing. So once I was able to kind of, get back to myself and realize I did not bring this on my own, because I took a lot of the guilt.
Mm-hmm.
I took on, and that's, as parents, we do that anyway, right?
Yeah.
That, whatever our kids are going through, and if we're not able to reach them or to connect to them and help them in any way, we feel defeated. And so that was defeat in itself, right? For me. And then, but you do need a professional. You do. You need
Yeah.
a professional to really get to unpack a lot of things that you're not, you don't see the full picture because you don't understand the full picture. And so I needed to get that. So once I got understanding and the role that I played, and how that it was beyond, how it was beyond my knowledge, I realized, okay, I can't hold on to this guilt. And that was another thing that the enemy was really using against me, is to make me feel guilty. And when you feel guilty, then you don't, you there you you feel to the point where you really can't function, and you feel like everything is hopeless. And so when you have a hopeless attitude, what can I say? You don't really get far anywhere. So played a that played a part of me getting back, right? Getting myself back and loving myself, realizing that I really do need to love myself. And so I had to figure what those things are, you know. But I also had to combat depression. And so
Mm.
once I understood what depression was, because I needed that to be unpacked, because a lot of people don't know, where it stems from, how it happens, all of that. And
Yeah.
so I had to write a piece. Now that I'm writing poetry, I had to write a piece on what, depression looks to me, so
Yeah.
that once I see it, I know how to reject it. All
Mm-hmm.
right, I can start the process of trying to reject it, and not allow it to have a hold of me. And so I did that, and I also gave it an acronym and all of that. And that helps, that helped me get back to loving me, because these are just little pieces of the puzzle that I needed to make a complete picture. And so it came in different segments for me. So I don't think I ever lost faith in God,
Mm-hmm.
right? I never went to him and say, why?
Mm-hmm.
Why do I keep getting traumatized, right? Because
Yeah.
obviously at some point you have to take accountability of that, because it's something that I ain't doing. I can't keep pointing my finger at people and blaming them, like, why did you do this to me, when I am also a participant. So I am really big. If those of you who follow me, you know that I'm really big about being self accountable. You have to be self accountable, because no one can treat you good if you're not being able to treat yourself good. And then, you know, with saying that I have to be accountable on how I treat myself, because if I want people to treat me the way I want to be treated, then I have to be self accountable
True.
in the way that I treat myself. If this makes sense. And
Yes.
then I can demand, once I got that, I can demand you to treat me the way I want to be treated.
Okay. We
Okay.
teach others how to treat us by how we treat ourselves. Yes.
Right. And
Absolutely. That's
and
right.
so that statement is very, it holds true. And if if you believe in that statement, then you have to put the work in. And so I can't expect anybody to treat me any better than I am treating myself. And so I had to take accountability for that. So I don't, like I said, I don't think I ever, like, I don't believe, I don't believe I ever questioned myself or questioned God in the situation that I am. And that is probably just due to being seasoned in as a believer, right? But I know that it can test people into thinking like, why would you allow this to happen, right? And
Yes.
so, but there are many reasons why things happen. First of all, we live in a sinful nature. We live in a sinful world. We're born into this world, but the part that we have to remember that we're not of it, right? And so,
Absolutely.
um, and how are we not of it? And that's where our faith has, we have to apply that faith. And so until you get that revelation, until you get that understanding, it's not going to hold true to you. Um, but um I got back to God when I was done feeling, when I was done being alone, because
Mm.
that's all I wanted to be, was alone. I felt that that's what I deserved. Right?
Mm.
So when I was done feeling lonely and being tired of being lonely is when I felt like, all right, let me completely give all of this, because now I realize it was out of my control. Now I realize I don't have to carry the guilt. Now I realize there's things that you have to realize, and that you're like, you know what, this entire situation, I'm going to give it over to the Lord. So once I casted my care upon the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
because I know that He cares enough to carry that load, then I was able to be free.
Mm.
Yeah. It was just that simple. But
That's so
it
deep.
took me years for me to unpack it, to learn from it, to want to not do it again, to not
Mm-hmm.
put myself in a position like that, to understand that my worth is priceless.
Yes.
Um, yeah, until I got to that point, sis. Yeah, that's when I said, all right, this is yours. And then once I was free from that, and now I'm becoming this vessel, right? And then I'm impacting people with my vulnerability, my stories, my life. It is there where I begin to see that I don't have to worry about a doggone thing now going forward.
Yes.
And it was that easy for me to just give it to the Lord. And I continue to give things to the Lord. Up, I'm behind on my mortgage, but guess what? The lights ain't gonna go out today. You
Mm.
know, just simple analogies or simple situations. And I'm like, my son looked at me, and well, one recently, my son says, I trust you,
Mm.
but you scare me. And I'm like,
Your
what
faith
do
is a
you
little
mean?
different.
But you know what? The relevance of that is that, and I wanted to ask him, what did you mean? But then I said, no. Okay, no, I don't need to ask him, because I understand where that comes from. He
Mm.
trusts me. That was the key note right there. That was the
Mm.
key word right there, is that he trusts me, but I scare him. And so I can go back to a situation where I had my car had broke down, and I needed a tow, right? I'll make this quick. And it was in the cold. I mean cold, cold. I called
Mm.
my neighbor. I asked him to come. He came. He tried to get this tire off my car just to put on, a spare. And I did not have a single penny to my name, right? To
Mm.
get towed. And so um the police came. They said, hey, we're gonna have to tow you. You know what I mean? We can't have you out here. And I'm like, don't worry, God's got it. And so they looked at me like I was crazy. But the whole time that my neighbor was trying to get this tire off, I was praising God. And and we're talking in the middle of the night, and we're talking like 30
Yes.
something, maybe 25 degrees outside. My sister-in-law, who was living with me at the time, came running behind me, and she's looking at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, all right, well then, let's just, the police ended up calling the tow. And I said, all right, we'll call it, they towed my car. I said, don't worry, I have the money. And I really didn't have the money, but God had the money. And that's the way that I was
Mm-hmm.
operating that day.
Come
And I was
on.
just like, I don't know what I'm doing here, Lord, but I'm just going to praise you in the midst. And
Amen.
so, if they're even watching, they'll even tell you that I was praising God in the middle of the night, singing my little heart out. And we get told my sister-in-law was kind of flirting with the guy. And when it came down to, I said, oh, well, thank you so much for towing. Do you guys take check? And I
Mm-hmm.
certainly was going to give him a check. And he said, don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
And he left. And so now that was another testimony. She was able to see how God, God's favor was on me, but I still had a situation. I didn't know how I was going to fix my car. I didn't know how bad the tires were, but I left it.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to get home. I was able to go to work. Didn't want to go to work, but how am I going to get this situation? But the whole time I was praising God. I was at work, content, trusting in him. And what happens? Somebody calls me to the front. And I said, you know what? I'm a little tied up back here, but can you send them back? And this happens to be um, my husband's friend at the time. And so he said, I don't know what you're
Mm-hmm.
going through, but the Lord told me to give you this envelope. And so I'm like, okay, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I opened it. It was $300. And it was just what I needed to fix the tires. And so this all happened in 24 hours. So when God shows up like that in my life and I see that, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
see that God talks to other people on my behalf. Well, why in the world would I ever stray from that? Why would I ever stray from that? So I looked crazy, to kind of piggyback everything that I'm trying to tell. I looked crazy, baby, to my neighbor, to the police officers, to my
Yeah.
sister-in-law. I looked crazy, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I bet you they'll trust me. I bet you that's a situation that they will trust what I say next time. And so when my son said that to me, that's what brought me back to, I I trust you. You scare me, but I trust you. And I am okay with that.
Wow. What I got from that right there, what I got from your son's words, I trust you, but you
Mhm.
scare me. I feel like that's literally exactly where God wants us with him. To trust him, because God be scaring us sometimes. Okay, God moves in mysterious ways. He does some complicated things. He just different. The
Mhm.
Bible tells us that his ways are not our ways, his thoughts are not our thoughts.
Right.
And sometimes it looks crazy, like you. I see you right now out
Mhm.
there just having praise and worship in the cold, and he like, but you believe in a God that answers prayers, and a
Mhm.
God that you may be in some scary situations, but he says,
Yeah,
trust me
that's
anyhow.
what he says to
You know, it,
do.
it's so yeah, that right there, that's a real testimony. That is the real, just your
Amen.
son's words alone, like the experience, yes, but just your son's words alone, like
Mhm.
that is where God calls us to be, like in a mindset that God, I don't know what holds tomorrow. I don't know what's in the future. I don't know, but I
Yeah.
trust you anyway, God. Like I believe you. What you say is long.
I'm even encouraging myself to as we're talking.
That's
So
deep. Yeah, that's deep.
yes. Yes.
Wow. I like to leave these with the scripture, with the verse that we can go back in and reflect, preferably a story that we can go back into. So as we begin to like lower our plane now, um, I don't know if you've read Judges 19. Judges 19. I'm gonna like give like a real brief overview of like the story in general. So pretty much this
Mm,
story is this man. Yeah, you're familiar. I see you
mhm,
shaking your head. This man, he has a concubine, and something happens. She leaves. He goes after her to go find her and bring her back home. So in the midst of going after her, he goes to her father's house. She's there. The father's like, hey, won't you stay and hang out with us, stay and party with us? Cool. He does. The next night, same thing. Next night, same thing. The father, for some reason, keeps trying to get this man to stay. He
mm,
does. And eventually he's like, all right, no, I got to go home. So he goes. He takes his concubine and they go. They go through a city that's real Sodom and Gomorrah-ish,
mhm,
a city that's real interesting. So they're trying to take refuge
mm,
in someone's house. The person lets them stay the night. I don't know. Back then, people were just real nice like that. He's like, yeah, come on in. So they stay. And, they eat dinner. They're, getting ready to turn it down and go to bed. And a group of men in the town, they were knocking on the door. And basically, they were like, yeah, send somebody out here.
mhm,
It's going down. They wanted to have sex with one of the men. And instead of, I don't know, instead of the men, you know, um
mhm,
I don't know. Instead of the men doing something else, this is what their solution was. They decided to take the women that were in the house and give them to this rioting mob. It's crazy. So they give over the concubine that he came to get. And, she's just out there all night. The men are doing whatever they're doing, they're abusing this woman. And by the time the morning comes up, the men done went to sleep. They done, all right, we're going to bed now. It's whatever. So she is at the brink of almost dying. Mind
mhm,
you, let's go back in the story. In the Bible, it says Israel had no king, right? No
mhm,
king, meaning no guidance, no law, no understanding of anything over them, like in their mind, like we are the glass ceiling, right? There was no king, there was no regulator. So, anyway, boom, they're asleep. The girl crawls to the door and she's
mhm,
almost at her last breath. The man opens the door, sees his concubine laying on the ground, and he didn't even have compassion for her. Like, he threw me out here and let this happen to me. He just was like, well, get up and we'll go. She couldn't get up because she had been assaulted all night. She had been beaten badly. She was out of breath. She was half dead. And because she didn't move when he said move, he went into the house, took a knife. This is graphic. I'm sorry, guys.
mhm,
Took a knife, cut her up, and sent her body parts, to the 12 tribes. And he was just like, I don't know, like an example or something. And at the end of this verse, the very, very, very last verse, verse 30, it encourages us. Like, why is this story in the Bible, why is this even, it's crazy, but the last verse sums it up. Consider and speak up. So why is this story even in the Bible? Well, this story is, it brings to light, number one, how women were treated back then, how we were just like objectified, and it is what it is, it happens to us. And when there's no law, right? When there's no governing force, this really taps into faith, right? When there's no governing force over you, when you don't believe in God, you don't have any rule over your life, and we move on our own accord in lawlessness, right? Anything goes. Very terrible things happen when anything goes. Very bad situations can develop when there's nothing to tell us, hey, that's wrong, right? Because if there was a law, if there was a king, if there was police, there would have been someone to stop the mob. There would have been someone to stop the abuse, but everyone was doing their own thing. Even the men went back inside to go to sleep. Everyone was worried about themselves. The
mhm,
men who threw her out there, they said, not me, take her. And lawlessness just going on, right? But that very last verse, right? Verse 30 encourages us to consider and speak up. Meaning, when there's wrongdoings, when there's situations like this right here, don't let it go.
Hmm.
Don't let it fly. And it's very sad because we see, that story in the Bible. That's real graphic. That's real crazy. That's a
Yeah,
story.
I'm actually gonna go visit that because I thought you were going somewhere else with the story, and I'm like, oh no, I don't know what she's talking about. So I will be checking that out.
Please do. Please do. Definitely read Judges 19, the whole chapter.
Okay.
And, read it in different translations. Even go on YouTube and listen to what other people have to say about this portion of Bible because
Mhm.
it's real deep and it's actually very sad. But the silver lining is it's just the reminder to let
Yeah.
us know to consider these things and
Hmm.
speak up. When you see injustice, speak up, speak out.
Right.
And you, being a woman who, I don't call you a victim, but being a survivor of
Hmm.
domestic violence, being a survivor of all the different things that you survived, sexual abuse, all this, unfortunately, you are very comparable to this young woman in this scripture,
Hmm.
right? But you're different from her because you have the ability to speak up,
Hmm.
not just for yourself, but for your daughters, not just for your daughters, but for other women who will come in contact with you, through your poetry, through your faith, through your life. So as we begin to close this segment, Nettie has spoken so many things to us. Like we got parenting 101 in here, we got faith, we got, everything. And, the story continues because there's still so much more to her. I want to encourage you guys to follow her on Instagram, follow her on Facebook, follow her on YouTube so that you can dig deeper into her story, enjoy some more of her work, keep up with her performances, hopefully see her live, you know. And it just, child, you just left so much with us. And I'm so
Oh,
excited
girl.
that
I
you
mean, I
came.
still, and I'm still kind of full. So
Yeah,
if I can just kind of like release some of this before
please.
like you ended, when you talk about motherhood, I just want to tap into people who don't have children, who
Mhm.
don't actually have children. But I just want to tell you that there is motherhood still in you. There's still, and there is fatherhood in you. And the direct correlation that I have with that is that Jesus may not have had children, but he was definitely fatherhood to a lot of
Yes.
people. And so motherhood just doesn't mean that you have to have children. It's people that you are willing to foster in your circle. And so don't think that you are left out in any way, because God uses everyone, whether you have children or not. I believe Jesus kind of like did it best when he discipled 12 people. You at least have 12 people that you can lead. You at least have 12 people that you can love and that you can nurture,
That's right.
that you have that ability to at least love 12. And
Mhm.
so that could be 12 children, that could be 12 people. I mean, however you need to do that, but you have a ministry of 12 at the very least.
At the very least.
At the very
That's
least.
good.
And
That's good
and
right
the other thing he also said to us is that we were going to do greater work. So
there.
where are those works at? You need to be able to use it. God is waiting. He's already called us. Many are chosen, but only few accept the call. So
That's
all right, I think I'm done.
right. That's good, Nettie. That's so good. Nothing goes to waste in the kingdom. Nothing goes to waste in the kingdom.
Okay.
I really do thank you for giving me your time, giving me your voice, lending us your story, your testimony, because my greatest hope for this platform right here is just like with the Daily Nugget, that it inspires people, but also that people come to know Jesus Christ through our life and through, our art forms, through
Mhm.
everything that we do. And as we leave this segment and this portion, of your open vulnerability and your story, and we leave Judges 19 on the table for everyone to go back and read,
I'm gonna definitely do that.
please remember that last verse. Consider and speak up. Use your art form as a way to speak up about different causes. God inspires so many different causes in us.
Mhm.
Some of us are moved, and you can't tackle everything. Okay, you can't tackle everything. Everybody is meant to to hit their own target. Some of us, God puts homelessness on our heart to begin to minister to. Maybe that's your testimony. That's what you've been through. That's where God is moving you. Some people, you've been in domestic violence relationships, whether it was physical or emotional. Unfortunately, I encountered emotional. There are so many of us who are called to, for children. Like helping, like Nettie, parents, call to parents. So whatever direction God is moving you into in your ministry, do it with a whole heart, and remember to consider and speak up. Definitely consider and speak up. God has a use for your voice and your talent. So as we close this faith and art portion, I thank you for watching. Again, I hope that you do go ahead and follow Nettie Long Poetry and myself on all platforms. Please don't forget to leave a subscribe, a comment, hit the bell, and we thank you so much for just, rocking out with us. Nettie, thank you, thank you, thank you. Cannot thank you enough.
It's my pleasure, sis.
All right, you guys, it's been wonderful. We'll see you in the next 2 weeks with the next Faith and Art flyer coming soon. And hit that bell so you come on, you already know what to do. This has been your girl ToriLive, and I thank you. Have a good night.